In our foreign affairs series, we are focusing on Sri Lanka. As itself, a foreign secretary has pointed out some time back, Sri Lanka must be a small country in geography and in population, but it holds a key strategic location and it is a big power in the subcontinent, rightly so. And to talk about that, we have a very distinguished Navy veteran, and now is the Foreign Secretary of Sri Lanka, Admiral Professor Jayanath Colombage. So good evening, sir. I welcome you on BW, Businessworld and BW Defense. For my viewers, let me give introduction of Admiral Jayanath Colombage. He's a current Foreign Secretary of Sri Lanka. He has served Sri Lanka Navy for a period of 36 years and retired as the Commander of the Navy on July 1st, 2014. What is important as a Foreign Secretary is that he also holds enormous experience in the capacity as a veteran of naval commander. And this puts him firmly on a different perspective where he can look out much broadly from the security perspective, as I point out. Since November last year, he has also been a foreign affairs advisor to President Gotabaya Rajapaksa. He has been the team's commander of Sri Lanka Navy and was decorated for gallantry and commended for exceptional service for the Navy. His doctoral thesis, which is very important and would be the point of discussion today, is asymmetric warfare at sea. And it is a very contemporary and very futuristic. And this is how the future warfare holds, which you come to know in the discussion. Foreign Secretary, I begin by asking you, geopolitics has changed dramatically as post-COVID-19 and taken a new dimension and shift. I say the shift of power towards Asia. How Sri Lanka will play its role and be true to its foreign policy of neutrality, strategic autonomy.
Manish,
to you, sir.
Thank you very much for having me in your program. Thank you very much for giving a very good introduction to me and some of the things I keep forgetting about what I have done in the past. There are so many things I have done. Of course, my linkage to India is really great. I have done like 3 training courses in India. And I have been linked with almost all the top level think tanks in Delhi and Goa, and I have been a regular visitor. But of course, unfortunately, the COVID came and then we really could not meet as much as we would like to. But you mentioned this geostrategic competition escalating after the COVID-19, but of course, it was taking place even before COVID-19. So this is an occurrence we see in Sri Lanka practically on a day-to-day basis. We do see this geostrategic competition unfolding in front of our own eyes practically on a day-to-day basis. And we also see that, if you like to use the word, the spheres of influence of many countries are coinciding in this small, tiny island in the Indian Ocean, whether it is the Indian, the Chinese, the Japanese, Australian, American, Russian, EU, UK, all these spheres of influence, Sri Lanka is part of because of the geographical location. Now, when you talk about the geographical location of Sri Lanka in the Indian Ocean, there are key factors that we have to remember. One is the centrality of this small country in the Indian Ocean. The second point is the close proximity to the busiest east-west shipping lane across the Indian Ocean. We all know that the Indian Ocean is fast becoming the lifeline of the world, because they say 72% of energy, 50% of containers, 35% of bulk cargo are carried across the Indian Ocean trade routes. And a very important aspect is Sri Lanka is geographically very close to India. Now, India is a biggest country, biggest military power, biggest population, 7,500 kilometers of coastline, and 2018 it was the fastest growing major economy in the world and tipped to be the number 3 economy by 2030. So these are the factors, in fact, influencing the defense and foreign relations of Sri Lanka. Now, in that game, in that geostrategic game, how do we survive is a question that we keep asking on a day-to-day business. And now this geopolitical, the geostrategic competition is not really taking place under the carpet. It is now being played in the open. So this is why Sri Lanka has reiterated that we wish to remain neutral in this game. Of course, technically we are a non-aligned country, but Manish, you know, non-alignment movement was created in the way back after the end of the World War II. That was for a different purpose, although it is still there. So whilst remaining a non-aligned country, we want to remain neutral because we don't want to be caught up in this power game. We don't want to hedge one power against the other. We don't want to choose one power against the other. We don't want to bandwagon one power against the other. That's not good for a small country like Sri Lanka, and it is our way. We need to maintain our own strategic autonomy. We want to maintain relations with every country and at the same time benefit from economically to develop the people of Sri Lanka. Now, in this game, we do understand India's strategic security concerns, and we need to pay greater emphasis and attention to that because we have no intention of, and we can't afford to be a strategic security concern to India. So this is a very, very difficult game, although the small country that we have now, and we have wavered. From time to time, you know, we tilt towards one particular country, and then after another 5-10 years, we tilt towards another country. And every time we did that, we didn't succeed, right? Now, I think the realization has set in that we need to remain neutral, maintain good relations, and be mindful of India's security, strategic security concern. So these are the factors, in fact, shaping Sri Lanka's foreign policy and defense policy, and that is actually the survival of our country.
Foreign Secretary, I recall one of your interactions with media, and you pointed out something, you know, which is very important. I say it is not about this government, and my being a foreign secretary for 5, 6, or 10 years. Basically, the neutrality of Sri Lanka and the strategic autonomy will remain and should remain forever. But how do you think it is possible in the geopolitical situation, the change of the government in Sri Lanka? It has been a flip-flop and shift of policies from one government to another. How do you see such things happening in future? How do you ensure that, Foreign Secretary?
You know, Manish, we are a democratic country and we love democracy. We don't want to have anything else. We have never had an authoritarian rule, or we never had a military dictatorship. We never had. So we are quite happy with the democratic system. But then there is the other side to this democratic system also, Manish, because it is short term and we are divided and we don't want to take risk. Why? Because we have short cycles of 5 years, right? So every government which comes to power, first they have to sail through the initial 5 years, right? So that is why in Sri Lankan context, we have not seen long-term visions, long-term development strategies. Unfortunately, we have not seen. We initially see something for 5 years, and then of course, it depends on the same government stay in power or not, it may continue or not. And then generally, the opposition in Sri Lanka is always opposing, right? So they think their job is basically to oppose. And very unfortunately, as you mentioned, every time a government change, our policies change. Because the people change, people who handle these matters change, and then together the policies change, which is not good for a country like Sri Lanka. We need sustainability, right? So that is why I have been saying we need a long-term vision for this country, not limiting to the 5-year democratic cycle. Democracy is a great thing, but still there are certain aspects we need to understand which is not favoring the development of the country. You see, we gained independence almost at the same time like India in 1948. Now nearly 72 years gone by. But where are we today after 72 years? Have we done justice to our people? And the obvious answer is no. Right? It is desirable that we do more. So this getting caught in this cycle is a very vicious cycle that we are caught. We need long-term strategic look. We need long-term vision. And if you look 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, I think then every time a government change, we will not change our policy.
Admiral Colombage, right after taking oath as a foreign secretary, in fact, it was you who said emphatically about India first policy, which is in vogue now everywhere, and which is good to hear as an Indian, of course. But I have a question to you on this, foreign secretary. Is it because you also realized, was there a missing link between the Indo-Sri Lanka bilateral relation in between, and that led to you to announce such emphatic India first policy, which might be there, but not in spirit, not in deeds. How do you look at the India first policy and how it will unfold in terms of our, as far as foreign security, foreign defense policies are concerned?
Well, you see, I was basically echoing the thinking of the president and the government. You see, our president, when he visited India after assuming office, he spoke the same thing. And our prime minister, when he visited India, he spoke the same thing. And our president, when he gave an interview to Nitin Gokhale, he spoke the same thing. That is, we do have to understand India's strategic security concerns. Number one, Sri Lanka is very close to India. We are separated by a narrow strip of ocean called the Pork Strait and the Gulf of Mannar, and the closest point is about 12 nautical miles. That's a very short distance. And if you talk in military terms, if you talk on naval terms, practically within half an hour, you can cross to the other side's water. From one country to the other side, crossing the international maritime boundary line is half an hour. And if you take an aircraft, it is less than 2 minutes. Right? That means Sri Lanka is pretty much within the Indian maritime security umbrella and Indian air security umbrella. Now that is why Ambassador Shivashankar Menon, when he wrote the book Choices, he said Sri Lanka is an aircraft carrier which is parked 14 nautical miles across the Pork Strait. We don't want to be that aircraft carrier. We don't want anyone to use our country to be a threat to India. But then India's concerns, we have to understand. We have to understand because if you look at India and Sri Lanka, we have so many things in common. Culture, religion, food, dress, we have many things in common, right? So there is no reason why we should say we don't care about India's security concern. No, we have to be mindful. And, you know, in the past, in the history, every time we did not take notice of that, there has been problems. There has been impacting on the bilateral relations between the two countries. Now, the mistrust in such situation is detrimental to our development. It is detrimental to our bilateral relations. So therefore, the president, the prime minister, and the government is very keenly understanding the importance of India's strategic security concerns. Now, India is, as I mentioned in the beginning, is a big country, big military power, 7,500 kilometers of coast, a nuclear power. So you have your own security concern. So we have no right to be a concern to you on that aspect. So therefore, we have to be very mindful of that fact, and we should never ever allow another country to use our territory or our territorial waters to be a threat against India. So that is what I meant. I was basically re-emphasizing what the president, the prime minister, and the government is thinking at this moment.
Very well elaborated, Foreign Secretary. Now I come back to, I take your point, you say Sri Lanka would not be a soccer ground. for any country, for the matter, to play there. Rather, Sri Lanka would be the neutral referee, in this matter. But Foreign Secretary, there, as a democracy, there are some right and wrongs. And Sri Lanka being a democracy, which you pointed out, will play a role as a righteous, in the geostrategic space. Having said that, I would like to ask you on some of those key geopolitical theories which are coming up and which promise to shape up in the region, because there are many countries involved, including India. On that note, I would like to know your perspective on Indo-Pacific and such alliance like Quad. As a military commander, as a naval commander, Quad, which has 4 nations doing naval maritime exercises, and those were high operational maritime exercises to the tune of, we have Indian aircraft carrier Vikramaditya and strike carrier group from USA, Nimitz. These are the 2 top of the notch warfare assets. They came together, including Japan, including Australia, in the region where Sri Lanka is there, and as our neighbor. You had a concern over this, basically. But you also said about, if we talk about the Quad Indo-Pacific, you said recently, if it is an inclusive multipolar world, I am very, very happy to accept that. So as a democratic person, how do you see the difference between, say, if I compare with a concept like BRI, which is already there, and concept like Indo-Pacific? I suppose it responds to BRI. Let me not mince the word to you, Admiral. And which has also difference in terms of approaches. One is led by the democratic country, Indo-Pacific Quad. Other is led by not a democratic country, and with their ways and means, which you also understand much better. How do you look at Indo-Pacific and Quad in comparison, Foreign Secretary?
Well, Manish, I mean, as far as Sri Lanka is concerned, Indo-Pacific is too big for us, because even Indian Ocean is little too big for us, because we are a small country, right? But it's not the case with India, because India is a big power and your ambitions are not necessarily restricted to Indian Ocean, and it extends to the entire world, so to say. So we have no issue with that. But what I would really like to see is an Indian Ocean strategy coming up. I mean, a strategy designed, developed, agreed by the Indian Ocean littorals, maybe through IORA, Indian Ocean Rim Association, because I feel as long as we don't have our own narrative, as long as we don't take control of our own destiny, I think we are not doing justice by our people. So I mean, of course, Indo-Pacific strategy is there. I'm saying, in that I also feel that India should be leader. Right? I mean, IORA we have, IONS we have, right? Why can't Indian Ocean have our own strategy? This is a question I like to ask everyone, right? Now we have Indo-Pacific strategy. We have a free and open Indo-Pacific strategy. We have Belt and Road Initiative. We have Asia-Africa Growth Corridor. We have Bay of Bengal Initiative. We have Millennium Challenge Cooperation Compact. We have so many strategies coming from outside to the Indian Ocean, right? Now you mentioned about Quad. I mean, anyone is free to have an alliance. There is nothing to prevent big powers getting together. But then why do we need Quad in the Indian Ocean, right? The top players, the India, Japan, America, and Australia. Is it purely to counter China? Is Quad and Malabar one and the same? Now you mentioned about the big exercise. I mean, I say India has the right to do any military exercise with any country. There is no issue. And so, I mean, countries can get together. But what is the ultimate objective of this? Right? Now, I remember hearing this word, especially from Indian strategies. It should be an ICLOD, ICLOD. Inclusive Quad, right? I have heard this word coming from Indian scholars, right? Then all of a sudden we heard that +2, that is EU and France and Germany wanted EU, the Quad plus, right? So what I would wish to see is inclusivity in the Indian Ocean. not exclusivity, because what will happen, Manish, we all know as of now, the Indian Ocean is the most militarized ocean in the world. At
Yes.
any given time, there are about 120 warships belongs to about 28 different nations are in the Indian Ocean. And we really don't know how many nuclear submarines are there. We don't know how many submarines carrying nuclear warheads are there, right? We don't know, but we are really militarized. And this small country in 1971 proposed that Indian Ocean should be a zone of peace. And everybody agreed at that time. It was
Yes.
ratified through the United Nations, right? There were three things we wanted to prevent at that time. One, nuclearization of the Indian Ocean. Two, militarization of the Indian Ocean. That is to have bases. Three, using these bases to fight against the other. That was in 1971. Now, fast track 49 years, we can't have the same, right? There is no way, because Indian Ocean, India and Pakistan are both nuclear nation, and your neighbor China is also a nuclear nation. So we cannot have denuclearization. And demilitarization is not possible, right? Bases, whoever is having, they are going to have it, right? So in this sense, at least how do we prevent further militarization of the Indian Ocean is something that we should really look at, right? So in that sense, other than the four major powers or the pillar countries in the Quad have this fear. They fear, is Quad going to lead to a maritime cool war in the Indian Ocean? Will the Quad lead to another arms race or unnecessary arms race also? I will argue in the Indian Ocean. Because, Manish, one thing we have to understand, we are not yet rich countries. We are all developing countries.
Right.
There are certain level of poverty in our societies. We need roads, clinics, we need ports, airports. But if we are not, rather than spending money on that, if we get on with an unnecessary arms race and spend that much money on that, I think we are not doing justice to our people. Now, most of the countries are at least 70 years after the gaining independence, right? Have we really done justice to our people? This is a question I think we must ask, right? Have we really done justice to the people, to uplift them from where they are? And when I look around Sri Lanka, I think we have not done justice. So my thinking is, Quad is maybe a great thing, but will it lead to another unnecessary arms race in the Indian Ocean is a question we have. Now, that is why I say we need to have our Indian Ocean strategy. Now, let me do a very brief comparison. Yes. Now, you asked this from me, Indian Ocean, Indo-Pacific strategy and the Belt and Road Initiative. Now, if you ask Sri Lanka, and I think I'm sharing the views of many countries in the region, right? How do you look at Indo-Pacific strategy? Or free and open, rules-based maritime order. Don't we all want that? We want it, 100%, right? But then let us shift quickly to the Belt and Road Initiative, right? Let's not get into politics. The Belt and Road Initiative, as they proclaim, is a maritime infrastructure development related maritime trade oriented network. Right. Now we want that, right? So we want the good of both. We want the good of both without getting bandwagoning with anyone. So this is a predicament.
But Foreign Secretary, may I interrupt you on this? Of course, you have been a key observer. You have been also a great academic. You know where it is going. As far as BRI is concerned, it is a very cliche term now. Everybody talks about. But then their rules, their engagement, their terms and conditions is widespread, opaque. They're hideous, and that has caused trouble to the partner country, including Sri Lanka. While the other side, there's a concept which is a democratic concept, which is coming up. I'm not sure how it will turn out to be, but at the moment it looks like a democratic country coming up to counter such engagement and come out with something which is more transparent. You talked about the infrastructure development. I understand Indo-Pacific has a similar intention, similar motive of infrastructure development in the region, and of course to have a market, no doubt about this, basically. But don't you see the inherent difference between these two concepts, sir?
No, I mean, that's what I said. I don't want to get into the politics of these two concepts because these are perceptions, these are arguments and counter-arguments. But let me reiterate one small fact. Now, Asia Development Bank very recently released a report, and they say from 2020 to 2030, this region needs 16 trillion US dollars for infrastructure development. 16 trillion US dollars for infrastructure development. Right. Now, Manish, can you tell me where this money can come? Not only to Sri Lanka, to all the countries, right? So can these democratic countries provide that kind of money to develop the infrastructure of other countries, right? Now, there is an issue between capacities and capabilities. Right. There is a gap. Right. There is a gap, right? Now, can India provide everything to the whole region? You can't. You have to develop your own country. You have to look after your own people. You have to develop your ports, your airports. Yes, you do support greatly to other countries, but you cannot take the burden of the entire region. You have to develop India first, right? There's nothing wrong in that. India first, right? So then, of course, now you have the neighborhood first policy. And I actually like one concept of India, that is SAGAR, security and growth for all in the region. Now we need that. We need security and growth, because what is the purpose of having security if there is no growth? For whose benefit? For whose sake? Right? What is the point if we have a very beautiful Indo-Pacific region, free and open Indo-Pacific region, rules-based, but if we are not becoming part of the global supply chain, and if we are not benefiting from maritime trade, what is the use? So we need to balance the two, right? We need to balance the two rather than, work together. That's our wish, actually, to all the major players. You see, I will quote Joe Biden in his victory speech. He said something very beautifully. It really caught my eyes. He said, we can be opponents, but we don't have to be enemies. Right? That's a beautiful, I mean, he has to walk the talk now. So that's yet to be seen, right? But then, you see, as long as the major powers are fighting for influence in this region, smaller countries like Sri Lanka will continue to suffer, right? So what we need is not big powers to fight, but support us. And we don't want loans. Now, you mentioned that some projects coming with loans and it may not be in favorable terms. Manish, I had to say one thing. We should be educated enough, experienced enough countries to smell a rat. If there is something foul, we should be bright enough rather than blaming somebody. This guy is coming. Nothing is free in this world. You get something, you have to give something. So you have to be smart enough. Any recipient country should be smart enough not to be caught to a trap, right? So that is what we want. We want free and open Indo-Pacific strategy, or Indo-Pacific Ocean, or Indian Ocean, but free trade and more trade. We want to benefit from that. We want to benefit from the location that we are sitting on top of the global shipping network. Now, we don't see, unfortunately, Manish, that much investment coming from everywhere. Right? Now, take the case of Sri Lanka. 2009, the war ended. Who actually came to support us? India. Right. One big country, one big support, laying railway tracks, clearing harbors, clearing millions of mines, building 50,000 houses. India came forward. Japan, they were there. They continue to support. Who else came really? Only China. Right? Now imagine, Manish, that was 2009. Now today we are living in 2020. 11 years passed. Did we have any other offer? Not much. Now,
in real terms, not much.
I always say India did a great thing, but I'm saying big money, big investment. We did not have. We did not have many choices. Now, if we did not take what China offered, we would be still same as 2009. So this is the reality on ground. We need to be people-centric.
Foreign Secretary, we have to come back to the economic part of diplomacy. It is a center stage now. Economic plays a major role even in foreign policies, And a growing Sri Lanka is always good for the reason, specific to India, a happier, a growth-led environment in Sri Lanka is equally better for India. Now, knowing the tight fiscal deficit in Sri Lanka, and you understand there have been a sort of now we call a loan culture in Sri Lanka, which is widely even discussed in the public domain. Will it stop now? And if it stop now, Foreign Secretary, what is the way out for the economic development of Sri Lanka? And which is very important to talk about, because ultimately it is the economy that paves way to our policies and well-being, as you have pointed out, what we have done for the people.
Yeah, Manish, that's a very question. I think we all need to find answers. Now, Sri Lanka's debt to GDP ratio is as high as 86%. That means if we earn $100, we have to pay $86 back to some other loan, right? So as high as 86%, it is changing, and it is a very high figure for a developing country, right? The money that can be used to develop hospitals, roads, water, sanitation, we have to pay the loans that we have taken. Now, we had this policy, we take loans, right? We take loans to pay the other loan, right? We take loans to develop the country, and we say that is development, but that's not real development, right? Gradually, we become enshrined into a huge mess, right? And we have to pay the loans, we have to pay the interest, and we are not making money out of it, right? So right now, that is why this government has a policy, zero loans, no more loans for Sri Lanka. That's a very strong policy, right? But what can we do with the loans we have already taken? We have to honor them. We have to repay them, and that's why we have requested India for a debt moratorium, and we have requested World Bank, IMF, ADB, bilateral lenders like China to give us a moratorium for debt repayment, right? Because we need breathing space, and the COVID has made the matters worse. Yes. Our income, of course, our export maintains some high level, but then tourism is gone, near zero. Right, so we are going to have a problem, and we don't want to add to that problem and allow it to be carried to the next government whenever they come to power, or pass it on to the people who are not even born yet. Right, so very consciously the government has said no more loans, and please don't come with a loan. You can come with the FDI, joint venture, build, operate, transfer, but no loans. Right? If we are valuable, the strategic value of the location is there, come with investment, but no loans. Because I think as of end of last year, we were in the region of debt to like 57 billion US dollars we had to pay back. Right now, many people saying that China has trapped us with the debt. But if you really look at the total amount of loans we have taken from China, it is less than 9% of our external debt, right? So it is not China alone, it is us. We are to be blamed for getting into that mess or this mess, right? So there is no point blaming someone. That is why I said we should be clever enough not to fall into a trap, even in the name of development. Now, Manish, also allow me to say, I don't think we can hide things. People talk about Hambantota port, right? We have taken a loan to build the port. And then with the change of government in 2015, what happened? They stopped the work of the port. They stopped bunkering, right? And then what happened? They negatively branded it as the biggest swimming pool in the world, right? Now, that is not the way to promote your own port. When I say your own port, mean your country's port, right? Instead of doing that, they should have finished with the balance portion of the work, brought cranes, brought ships, and start making money, So this is the problem, that we are caught in that democratic cycle. So you repeatedly said the democracy is doing this and they are giving. Well, there are other side to democratic cycle as well, right? So what we need is peace and stability, but we need trade, we need infrastructure development, we need foreign direct investment, no more loans.
Foreign Secretary, coming back to the India relation, as I say, how in your leadership, how it will unfold. And I understand Sri Lanka has asked India for further swap arrangement of $1 billion, which is, I think, due to the COVID-led pandemic and the total market shutdown and the total closing of the economy. I understand that. And Prime Minister Mahendra has also mentioned about pending request for a 3-year moratorium of about 900 million debt owed to India. What is the status and expectation from India on this, Foreign Secretary?
Well, I don't know exactly, but we are hopeful that India will be, as always they have done to support us. India has never been like the Shylock demanding us to repay or demanding things. They have been, really the good neighbor. You understand your neighbor, the small neighbor, and you don't really force upon the neighbor. So India, I'm sure India has their own way of doing things. You can't just expect the moment we ask, oh yes, we will give you a moratorium. We can't expect that. So you have your own issues to handle. You have your own bureaucracy, the mechanism. So maybe finally it will come through. But India will definitely help Sri Lanka. You see, even throughout during the COVID, India sent, I think, at least 2 plane loads of essential medicine to Sri Lanka free, totally free, right? So India has been there to support us during the COVID pandemic, and no sooner the COVID is over, things can be back to normal. And if you look at the number of tourists coming to Sri Lanka, top is Indian tourists. Right? So we want that to happen again. We want Indian tourists to come. We have many things in common. We have the religious circuits, you can crisscross. And so things will happen the moment the COVID is over. And I think India will be a strength to the Sri Lanka. And that is why whatever the misunderstanding, whatever the mistrust which had prevailed between our two countries, I think we have 2 very strong leaders in India and also in Sri Lanka. I think they do understand each other very well, and their chemistry is perfect. And also, I have to be honest and say that we like to see a strong central government in Delhi. We don't like to see a government which is depending on the regional political parties. So we are quite happy the mandate the BJP has got. And I think we have been very comfortable with the BJP leadership. And India, after the Modi ji came to power, they came out with neighborhood first policy, and then Sri Lanka is part of that neighborhood first policy. And then you came out with SAGAR. Sri Lanka is a part of the SAGAR, security and growth for all in the region. You came with the Act East policy. Sri Lanka is part of Act East policy as well, because the East start from Sri Lanka. So these policies are meant to enhance the power. But of course, when you say neighborhood first, now you say neighborhood -1 first, right? You know what I mean? Well, that's your problem. It's not our problem. Pakistan is also a country which has supported Sri Lanka. So in that sense, we don't want to take any sides between what is happening. It's a bilateral issue for India and Pakistan to resolve. We wish that, it is going on for like 6-7 decades now, or 7 decades plus. A solution will be found mutually. And that would really benefit because, Manish, it's difficult in this world to rise individually as a country, but it's easy to rise as a region. Now, we can argue whether European Union is a success or not, but they rose together. But we can argue the ASEAN is a success. 10 different countries with 10 different philosophies, 10 different issues, but they're working together in common issue. But look at South Asia. Right, such a small gathering, so many commonalities, but we are not together, unfortunately.
Rightly pointed out.
At least must rise as a region. SAGAR.
Foreign Secretary Jayanath Colombage, again back to the economic aspect of our relationship. You have been again be vocal with first neighborhood first and your India first policy, but there are key projects from India, for example, and you also wanted a friendly country to invest in Sri Lanka, develop port infrastructure, and so do India look for such investment from the country. But there seems to be a pause on the final decision on the East Container Terminal ECT project at Colombo port, which initiated 2019. Is Sri Lanka firm on ECT project? What is your take on such delays?
Well, I think the decision will be made very quickly, and the president is very keen to honor the MOU signed between the two countries in 2017 regarding the ECT. And Manish, I had to tell you, we have wasted 5 long years not utilizing the East Container Terminal of Sri Lanka. It is 600 meters of quayway built and huge area unused for the last 5 years because of this, what you are saying, indecision. So it has already cost us millions and millions of dollars. Now the government is very determined to move ahead and to honor commitments previous government made. You see, usually a new government would say it was done in the past, so we are not going to honor that. No, this president has said, no, I will honor that commitment because it relates to India, right? Now, we all know the port of Colombo has risen to the 18th best connected container port in the world this year, right? And through this port, about 38% of containers we handle are from India. So, that's a large number. That's a huge, proportionately, a huge chunk of containers are from India. So naturally, India should be given to operate the East Container Terminal, and we have agreed. But actually, Manish, I have to tell you, if the decisions are made based on economics, things are different. But when the decisions were made in order to strategic off balance, that's where it goes wrong. Now, India is a democratic country, Sri Lanka is a democratic country, people have their own voice, people have their own perception, and the opposition is always inciting this opposition from the people, right? So people in the port are not willing to go ahead with that project, but then they are not the decision makers. Of course, for them, they don't really bother about, or they may not really understand the geostrategical implications, right? They may think, oh, this is our port, we have to be there, but that is extreme nationalist feeling. It may not work. But you see, my point is, we have to make this happen. We have to use this port. 600 meters berth already built. It's a matter of bringing a crane, get the ship work.
Yes. Right?
And Colombo port is nearing capacity on the other container jetties. So indecision has cost 5 long, very valuable years to Sri Lanka. We don't have the luxury of waiting any longer. So we have to make our commitment, right? We have to fulfill our commitment, and true to the word, India should make it happen.
Foreign Secretary, again back to it's time to collaborate more with India. Again, with the virtue of you being a top naval commander, you can see the potential the ocean offers to us with both country and Sri Lanka again being at the heart of such a oceanic landscape. Why not India, Sri Lanka look for regional partnership in maritime and develop maritime trading bloc? Can Sri Lanka collaborate on such a platform with India? And you also mentioned an Indian ocean region-led initiative, especially for the economic. Can you share some of your ideas if you have something also that might come from you being a naval commander?
No, Manish, as of now, I think our Navy-to-Navy interaction, the Navy to Coast Guard, or the Coast Guard to Coast Guard interaction is at a very high level, right? They do work together, they do train together, they operate together. One good example is the recent catching fire of the very, very large crude carrier MT New Diamond. right? The moment ship was on fire, the Sri Lanka Navy being the closest, rushed to the location. But within hours, the Indian Navy, Indian Coast Guard, Indian military aircraft were on the scene dousing the fire. And they did it for about a week or so, brought the fire completely under control and made the ship safe to sail, right? So that relationship is, I think, excellent between the two countries, the militaries, and there are high-level discussions, visits, and things like that. It's pretty much great, right? And also, we have a maritime domain awareness concept between India, Sri Lanka, and Maldives. Now, the last time national security advisors of these three countries met was 2014. Believe it or not.
Yes.
Right? We haven't even had a national security advisor level meeting for the last 5 to 6 years. Now we are determined to make that happen again. We are planning to make the NSAs meet and discuss about the trilateral cooperation, but expanding our MDA concept maybe towards Mauritius and Seychelles on that side, and Bangladesh on the Bay of Bengal, so that larger portion of the Indian Ocean will be under the MDA umbrella that we have created long time back. There again, we have wasted so much of time. Imagine the last meeting was, I think, in New Delhi in 2014. 2014, right? So we are reviving it, and we will do it very soon. You will come to hear about it, and let them talk and come out with this collaborative, cooperative mechanism for the Indian Ocean.
Admiral Colombage, again, back to such security collaboration. You spoke about EU as a success model. When we talk about defense capability, we as a region need to develop, and you also agree that basically. And India, as you said, can't do everything alone. If it has a partner like Sri Lanka in developing defense capability, that would be very viable and sustainable. I was speaking to Admiral Ravindra, who is a former Chief of Defense Staff, and we had during the discussion, we'll come up, why not India and Sri Lanka can build up, say something like a quid together. India can also facilitate such technology transfer, such sharing of technology platforms, and make a greater security partner. Do you think such defense collaboration with defense production is possible with India? Also recently, just last week, Bangladesh has signed such a collaboration of shipbuilding production and with India. What is your take on such things?
Well, it's possible and desirable to have embarking on joint ventures. You see, the last two ships, the last two advanced OPV the Sri Lanka acquired, were built in Goa shipyard, right? So the last two advanced OPVs built for Sri Lanka was built in Goa shipyard. So we already have defense collaboration. But yes, as you said, we can build the next one in Sri Lanka. That would be very desirable if we can do it. Because we need to keep on engaging together, right? For common good, common understanding, common defense. We have to work together as a region. Yes, very much open to that idea.
Foreign Minister, I understand towards the end of the discussion, again, very important question. World is also looking at Sri Lanka for this resolution that we call the Tamil reconciliation process, which is about the minority ethnic Tamils, that appear to have stalled. Would government intend to give Tamils a level of autonomy as stipulated in the peace agreement between the two countries? What is your take on your government and you as a foreign secretary?
Yeah, Manish, one thing we have to understand, reconciliation cannot be enforced. A reconciliation has to evolve through the society. Now, we cannot forget that 11 years ago, we had a terrible conflict in this country, a terrible war in this country. Maybe 100,000 people died, and our country's progress was retarded maybe by 6 decades. And infrastructure, including ports, airports, roads, stations, buildings, all were destroyed by terrorism, right? Now, India also feeling the punch. I mean, look at the 2008 Mumbai attack, right? It was not a very good to the Indian security apparatus. You are suffering from terrorism. So there cannot be a good terrorist and a bad terrorist, right? And once you are a terrorist, you are always a terrorist. That's what we believe in. Right now, we have suffered immensely because of terrorism. And we don't want to suffer anymore. And we don't want to promote terrorism in any, or at least to see promotion of tourism in any part of the world. Because this indiscriminate use of violence for political, religious purposes is wrong. So we need to work together. Now, of course, our threat is different. We have religious fundamentalism or religious extremism in our country. We need to work together, sharing information, sharing expertise, sharing the knowledge and mechanisms, and work together and get rid of this menace. But your question was not that. Your question was about reconciliation. Now, Manish, let me tell you, a Sri Lankan, average Sri Lankan, they want 5 things. They want a job, they want a house, they want good education for their children, they want health facilities, and they want security. Now, security from being persecuted because you belong to a different religion, from being persecuted because you belong to a different ethnicity. These are the 5 basic things a Tamil, a Sinhalese, or a Muslim in this country want, right? These are the 5 basic things, right? If you really ask where is reconciliation fit into that, it's much, 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 much lower. So this reconciliation term is actually something that the politicians use it, especially during an election, to win votes, right? And then you mentioned, are we going to devolve power, right? Sri Lanka is, I think, maybe smaller than a smaller state in India, or rather maybe same size of as Kerala maybe, right?
That's a big power, sir. It's a big power, of course.
No, I mean the size-wise, the size-wise, the area-wise, we are quite a small area, right? And devolving power is a very sensitive issue here. Now, already 1987 Indo-Sri Lanka peace accord is still in place. 13th Amendment, majority of the clauses are implemented, right? We have a chief minister, we have provincial council, we have provincial government, we have funds allocated to the provinces, right? All that is done. Only 2 things not done. That is giving police power and land power. Those 2 will never be given to the province. We can't afford to do that, right? But then let me ask you a question. Did 13th Amendment achieve its 2 key objectives? Number 1, bringing peace to the country, right? This is talking about 1987. I don't know whether you were born, right?
Of course.
1987, right? 1987, did we achieve peace through the 13th Amendment? The answer is no. Did we achieve the development of the 2 affected provinces through the provincial council? The answer is no, right? Categorically, the answers to both these questions are no, negative, right? So we have given powers. What we need is to ensure that we meet the 5 basic requirements of all Sri Lankans, right? Rather than focusing on, like glossy word like reconciliation. And reconciliation cannot be achieved when someone is pointing a gun at you and say, okay, reconcile. It can never achieve. That kind of an approach is detrimental to the genuine reconciliation process in the country. Now take the case of Geneva Resolution, right? Now Geneva Resolution, they say, oh, you have violated human rights. You have done this, you have done that, you reconcile. And that is going against the reconciliation process because that inside the nationalism in the majority people. Look, these people are trying to dictate terms on us. We are not going to do that. That's not good. Let us evolve ourselves. Let us come out of this, the mistrust that we have in our country. Let's treat each and every one as your own brother. It is possible in Sri Lanka because we have great religions. Hinduism, Buddhism, Christianity, and Islam. Great 4 religions. So let us use the religion to unite our people, reconcile the broken hearts, rewrite the social fabric, or create the social fabric which is torn apart, but not by force, not through coercive action. It has to evolve from us. It has to evolve from within. Then it will be a sustainable reconciliation, but not through by force.
Rather, you call it assimilation or greater autonomy or such things.
Natural assimilation.
Possibly.
Yeah, it has happened quite well.
So, Admiral Professor Jayanath Colombage, at his prolific best, the Foreign Secretary of Sri Lanka, very forthcoming on Indo-Sri Lanka bilateral relation, on his India First. Thank you very much, Admiral Colombage, speaking with us, speaking for Business World and BW Defense with Manish Kumar Jha. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you for your
Manish.
time.
Thank you.
And look forward to seeing you in Colombo soon when the pandemic is over.
Please come. You're welcome. All the best.
Thank you, sir.